Welcome to the first live in-person shooting of the SJPC cast. I am Skyler. With me is Jeff Kessler of the Vacancy Fee Project. We're very excited to have him on because our big item of this week is at-law legislation. More on that in a second. Before we get to that, I just kind of want to run you down on exactly what happened last week and kind of what else is coming up this week. So last week we had kind of the beginning of the department-wide budget work sessions where the departments were coming in to talk about what they think they could cut, what the ramifications of those cuts would be in order to address the city's deficit. So last week was the spicy one, of course, because we had PD and the Department of Community Response, who are often in opposition against each other from a budgeting perspective. So it was a long comment section. We get kind of another overview of where every council member's priorities lie in terms of how much of the budget they would like to keep in public safety and the police versus other departments that they have an easier time thinking about cutting. So if you haven't seen it, I actually recommend pop some popcorn and go find those comments. I'll link to those in our show notes. Because it is interesting, and it's also interesting to kind of see who the folks in your city are who feel strongly in either direction. There is no Board of Supervisors meeting next week, but there is some exciting stuff happening at City Council, and particularly, so this would be tomorrow. Happy St. Patrick's Day, by the way. At Law and Legislation at 11 a.m., and we're going to come back and kind of this will be the meat of the episode, but we have two items that are on the agenda. Item 5 is the status update on prior vacancy property tax exploration, where staff is going to come back and kind of talk to the Law and Legislation Committee about they went out into the community and surveyed things, and this is what they think about maybe possibly moving forward with a vacancy tax proposal. Spoiler alert, they feel like we should not do that. Then we go to item 6, which is the discussion of an enhanced vacant lot and building monitoring and enforcement program. That, from my read, is kind of a, hey, what if we did this instead of a vacancy tax item? And Jeff is on. Jeff has a lot more information about that. So we're going to get to that in just a second. But before we do, we also have City Council, the 2 p.m. meeting. The budget work sessions continue. This week we'll be hearing from Youth Parks and Community Enrichment, the Community Development Department, Finance, Human Resources, Information Technology, the Department of Utilities, and Public Works. So extremely important conversations, likely to have way less people who are showing up to yell at the council about them, but extremely important nonetheless. We highly recommend, if you have the time at 2 p.m. On Tuesday, check that out. And then at 5 o'clock, we have this item 2, which is the Vision Zero Action Plan update on their high injury networks. So this is kind of a look at how the folks who are responsible for sort of looking at the city in terms of how bike lanes work, in terms of how pedestrian traffic works, where are our most critical high impact areas, and kind of what can we best do to address those things and make the city in general safer, not only for drivers but for cyclists, pedestrians, scooters, everybody in general. So this is just kind of a review item. I think that this is likely to come back in a more substantial form very soon, and we will keep you updated on that. But it would be good if you don't have already any context for kind of how these things work. This would be a great entry point for that. That's enough of that. I've talked enough. Obviously, like I said at the outset, the 11 o'clock law and legislation meeting is the important piece with items 5 and 6. So I'm going to turn it over to Jeff. Jeff, what exactly are we talking about with items 5 and 6 regarding these property tax or vacant property fee items?
Yeah, thanks for turning that over. So there's been a couple things that have been going on. As you mentioned earlier, the city was originally looking at a vacancy tax. And so for the city to put a vacancy tax as a ballot measure for the voters, if it was put before them, we would need a 2/3 majority. Over a multi-year process, the city has kind of been looking into that. They've done some surveying. The majority of people right now do support a vacancy tax, which would be a tax on vacant buildings, vacant properties that are just otherwise unutilized. But the city doesn't right now think that there's enough support for a 2/3 majority. So at this time, they don't think it would be prudent to actually pursue a vacancy tax ballot measure. The interesting exception to that is if it's a citizen-led ballot initiative, you actually only need a simple majority, not a 2/3 majority.
That is interesting.
And so that's actually what my organization, Vacancy Project, is looking at doing. We're looking at bringing a ballot measure for a tax to Sacramento residents for the 2028 election cycle. We think that is likely to pass, and we think there's a lot of interest in it. If you're interested in learning more about that, check us out at vacancyfee.org.
Can you give us real quick, before we go too much further, just for folks who are completely unfamiliar with the idea of a vacancy tax, like what exactly it does and why people are excited about it? Can you just kind of give us a quick rundown on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you walk around Sacramento, if you go to any areas where there's a lot of commercial spaces, you'll notice that there's many just vacant storefronts. Those are the most visible things. Really, since remote work has become a thing, and there's been a really large economic change, there's also a ton of vacant like workplaces in general. I think you can go to any area pretty much in the US right now that has previously been a pretty large center for commercial operations. You'll just see boarded up storefronts, vacant buildings. We know in Sacramento, things off of Del Paso, things off of K Street, J Street, L Street. A lot of those areas are just very, very rife with vacant properties.
Stockton Boulevard.
Stockton Boulevard. There's tons of areas. And so in traditional economics, if you want less of a thing, you actually increase the cost. Like supply and demand, the more expensive something is, the less you have. Right now, vacant properties are actually kind of rewarded. There's a lot of economics behind it for why someone would want to actually not have a tenant in their property. But due to a variety of reasons, it actually becomes more profitable to just keep a storefront vacant than to actually rent it out at something that could, have smaller businesses come in, more interesting ideas, things that could promote entrepreneurship and other things. And so one solution is to actually change the economic calculus for property owners that are just sitting on and hoarding vacant properties for long periods of time. There's numerous properties that have been vacant for almost a decade. And if you create a tax structure for that, suddenly it's no longer as profitable for them to want to keep a space vacant, and they'll now start lowering the rents or looking to activate the space for public use. You don't necessarily need retail stores in all of these spaces, right? There's vacant lots, there's any number of things you could have. If you just spend a couple of minutes thinking about something you might like to see, like it's really pretty easy to think about other alternatives to these spaces. Like, I would love a downtown Sacramento bouldering gym to compete with Pipeworks, but that's just me.
Fair enough. The possibilities really are endless, not just in terms of what it would look like if we filled up these storefronts, but also what we could do with the money that we were collecting from landlords and these property owners who are delinquent and in kind of this blight issue. For example, one of the main things we always hear is that it's just not financially feasible to build affordable housing at the scale in which the city needs it. This is one way that we could add to that bucket. So what to you, so you said, this whole idea is kind of contingent on sending this to council, who would then send it to the voters to need a 2/3 vote, right?
So there's a couple things. So if we were to go chat with city council and say, city council, put a vacancy tax on the ballot for us, it would need a 2/3 majority. If it's a citizen initiated one, we need to go out, collect signatures, we can put it on the ballot, and then we only need 50% plus one.
So in your mind, then, the idea that they plan to basically dismiss the vacancy tax is not necessarily as big of an L as it may seem at first, because we have this other path towards an easier.
I think that's exactly right. And the other thing that they're currently doing right now is saying, hey, maybe we can bolster some of the infrastructure through this vacancy fee measure that they're kind of looking at. And so that's the other item on the agenda that's coming up.
Give us
So the rundown on that is right now the city of Sacramento does have a vacant lot registration program. It's a $70 a year fee that vacant lots should register to basically declare that they're vacant. It goes into the city, and then the city uses that money to provide some lot maintenance services and a few other things. We know right now that there are a ton of lots that do not actually participate in this. There's a lot of negligent lots out there that have a number of issues. They're not maintaining the lots. They are creating general safety issues, actually, from fire hazards to just like dangerous situations for people nearby. And so they're looking at, with this other agenda item for Tuesday, to really bolster and build on this vacant lot program by turning it into a vacant property registration and then monitoring program. So part of this would be, it would include vacant buildings, not just vacant lots. So those would get included in this. And it would expand the nuisance definition, which is, I think we can kind of determine from our own lived experience what might constitute a nuisance kind of property, but it's one of these things that is largely not maintained, does start presenting safety issues. There's complaints about it, 311 complaints. By the way, definitely submit 311 complaints. It's really good in the city of Sacramento for things. And so they're expanding that to include the vacant buildings. And to bolster this program, they'd be incorporating monthly monitoring. And so when you stack up all of these things together, you go from something that looks like a $70 a year fee to actually a real program that has staff dedicated to it that will go around. They will look at properties outside of just like once a year. They will do it monthly, and they will assess, and then they will try to help the property owners actually make their properties safe. And in the case of buildings, get their buildings ready so they can actually be rented out, not just boarded up, blighted things that might fall down if you sneeze. And so that's really kind of a great thing, because we do need a better infrastructure in place to actually allow people to know when a property is vacant, to get everything registered, to actually create corrective actions to make sure things are safe. And all of that does take money and would require, hiring staff and getting things out there. And so this agenda item, if this goes to city council and is adopted, it doesn't need any kind of voter initiative or any kind of vote for it. It just needs simple passing from the city council to then adopt a vacancy fee and monitoring program. And the costs that we're looking at, if fully enacted, which our agency organization would strongly encourage, would be something on the order of $600 to $900 territory dollars a month for negligent vacant properties. That's because someone needs to go out there, monitor it every month, really start looking at getting those properties safe, plus some initial registration fees. So you're looking at probably about under $10,000 a year for negligent vacant properties, which is something more than right now. So it might help some of these properties actually start moving towards being able to become usable and beneficial components of our community. But it doesn't go all the way to a vacancy tax that fundamentally will shift the math of, we should consider redeveloping this property, or we should turn it into a park, or we should lower our rent so that we can get a viable business in here.
So last question on this. So would this, I hear you that you and your group are in favor of this, the vacant lot fees. If you do follow through on like a community initiative to put vacancy tax on the ballot, would that replace the fees, or would that be like a yes and kind of a situation?
We would hope it would be a yes and kind of situation. I mean, we're still pretty early. As I said before, we're looking at a 2028 election cycle. So we're going to be, over the next couple of years, working with city council, working with, other stakeholders in the community to really, square up some of the draft language that we have right now and what that might actually do. But ideally, it would be a yes and kind of thing, which is fee, super important for building out the fundamental infrastructure to identify vacancy, to start remedying vacancy. And then a vacancy tax is, once we kind of know where stuff is, this will help us remedy the situation of vacancy for the long term.
Great. Well, Jeff, thank you so much for coming out and doing this. This has been hugely informative. I've had kind of the 1,000-foot view of a vacancy tax, but I've been having conversations lately that have been really clearing a lot of things up and adding things to the pie, and this is definitely one of them. I think you'll be there tomorrow morning at 11, right?
I'll be there tomorrow morning at 11.
Okay, great. I will be too. And if you can make it, I think it is worth just showing up, even just to advocate for a larger discussion around building vacancies and lot vacancies in general. This is something that has the potential to be super transformative in Sacramento. And I think that the more that we can have this conversation publicly, loudly, and get our elected representatives to engage with us on it, the better off all of us are. So I'll be there. You'll be there. Jeff, before we sign off, where can you and your org be found online?
Yeah, vacancyfee.org. We also have an Instagram with not enough followers, so definitely follow us. It's also just Vacancy Fee on Instagram, but vacancyfee.org, we're updating it. We have a mailing list, so please sign up. I think we're pretty active at getting information out there on the mailing list, so yeah.
Awesome.
Thanks.
All right, well, thanks again, y'all. Stay safe out there, and we'll see you tomorrow morning.